I do this thing whenever I go live. I'll say something like, if you've had money trouble in the last 3 months, put a 1 in the comments. And because I want people to see 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. And you're like, wait. It's not just me, It's not just me, because that's the thing about shame, right? Shame loves for you to think that it's just you. Shame is like, it's just me and you. You're all by yourself. Nobody could possibly understand. But the only way to shake shame is to give voice to it. Fortunately, money is linked to an unfair judgment about who you are and what you're capable of. And it's just unfair and not true, because so much of it really depends on the family you were born into, where you live, the country you happen to be born into, and so as a result, though, we make people feel bad, and they don't want to feel bad. Who wants to feel judged?
This is the Gold Digger Podcast.
Oh, this feels like a reunion in the best possible way. And this was the best year ever because I got to hug this guest in real life, which always makes me so happy. Tiffany, welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you, Jenna. It was really awesome to meet you in person, because how sometimes like you're so used to seeing someone online, they're like, oh, hey. I'm like, wait, I've actually not met you in person. Yeah.
Now, I want to do something a little bit different today, because you've already been on the show multiple times, and I want to kind of dive into the meat. Like, I just want to skip the small talk. People can go back and listen to how you got to where you are today, which is an amazing story, and definitely go listen to those episodes. But I really want to get to the meat of how can we become financially savvy? How can we find stability, security? I think these are all things that we are asking ourselves, especially as the world is shifting and we're preparing for a new year. So talk to me about that. Let's just dive right in.
Well, honestly, Jenna, it's like, if you were to look at social media and all that's happening in the news, it just all feels so overwhelming and scary, right? Interest rates are at all-time highs. There's a shortage of homes. Literally, I saw, which I thought was a joke at first, I think it was a TikTok of this TikToker that showed that somebody in Canada, because Canada is experiencing an even bigger housing crisis than we are, where somebody was renting half their bed.
Stop it.
Because there's not enough homes, not enough apartments, not enough, that it's you can not rent the room and there's 2 beds in the room. No. Half their bed. And she thought it was a joke, but then she did a little deeper dive and found out that was in fact what they were renting. And I was just like, what is happening?
Yeah.
In that we have to do something dramatically different if we are going to survive whatever this financial downturn that has been brewing for a while. It's, we have to look at our money differently. And I believe that the only way to survive is going to be through community. Yeah. For the last 15 years as the Budgetnista, I have built community, especially with women who are navigating their finances. But I'm not just talking about your online community. I mean siblings, parents, neighbors. I just had a Friendsgiving the other day, and I was telling my neighbor, because her husband passed away a number of years ago, and she's got 2 kids that she's raising. And I was like, if you ever get overwhelmed, girl, I have a kids cave, because my niece and nephew come over all the time. I was like, you can drop the kids off. I'm always home. They can play. I'll feed them. They can play with my niece and nephew, because they always come over anyway.
Yeah.
We have this thing called Sunday Supper, where I have my neighbors and sisters come. So I'm like, you don't have to be here if you just need a break.
Yeah.
And so that kind of community mindset, I bought a condo, earlier this year, and so I'm moving into that condo, but the house I live in now is paid off. And so my sister is going to live in this house with her 2 kids, and then I'm going to live in the condo. There's no mortgage, so I just told her cover the carrying cost, which is the taxes and her utilities, which is less than half of what she's paying now. Yeah. And so that's what community, kind of looks like. And I just think that there has to be a shift to that. How can we lean on each other, tap into folks that we know and might not know quite as well, to make sure that we see our way through this difficult time?
Yeah. One thing that I love that. And I also just think too, there comes this level of transparency. I was listening to the radio the other day. And they were saying that the word of next year is authenticity. And I feel like it's this word that we've talked about for, a decade on the internet. But I think that it is really becoming prominent of how do we show up authentically in this world of AI, and as everything is shifting, and what is real and what is not real anymore. And I think that authenticity and community go hand in hand, and it allows you to really open yourself up and be fully seen. And when I think about being fully seen, I think of this idea of wholeness, which is what you teach about. Can you explain, like, what is financial wholeness and how the heck do we get there?
So financial wholeness is a concept I came up with a few years ago when I was writing my first traditionally published book. It's a New York Times bestseller,
Boom.
just a couple of two New York Times bestsellers chilling.
That's right.
And so because I felt this visceral reaction against the term financial freedom, because it felt, it didn't feel inclusive, that everyone might not reach financial freedom. Everyone might not get this pile of money. And then what? So I thought about myself as preschool teacher Tiffany. If she never got, quote unquote, this pile of money, does that mean she doesn't get a good life? So I thought, can I create instead this system where even if you don't get this pile of money, that you can still have a really good life? And so financial wholeness is the system that I came up with, and it's 10 steps. It's budgeting, savings, debt, credit, income, investing, insurance, your financial team, your net worth, and estate planning. Those 10 core steps, if you can learn to master and maintain them, even if you lose your job, you'll still be okay. Yeah. Even as inflation is flaring up, you'll still be okay. Even as interest rates are too high for borrowing, you'll be okay. So financial wholeness is really like this baseline that you can weather the external financial storm because you are financially whole. It is the foundation for the rest of your financial life. And then you might start a business and you might do this and that, and then you might grow wealth. Great. But at the very least, we have this foundation for you. And so that is how you achieve it, that you have to learn to master and maintain those 10 things. And that's why I wrote Get Good with Money, my initial book, and my most recent book, Made Whole, which is the workbook version, the supplement, if you will, to that book, because I knew that folks needed not just kind of like, here's how you do the thing, but in Made Whole, the book, it's here's how you do it. And before you move on to the next chapter, let's practice.
Yes.
Let's
talk
practice.
About the power of that, because there is something like, I mean, there's so much science behind it, but like when we actually take pen to a paper and write things down, something really big shifts.
Yes.
And I think that for so many people, money is such a scary topic. They can't even open up the app on their phone, let alone like sit down and write the numbers down, because they don't even know what they're looking for. And so to be guided through that process. And so talk to me why it is so important to like actually do the work. Like, it's one thing to learn. That's a beautiful thing, right? But when you are actually like holding the mirror up to yourself, really digging in. So talk to me about why this came to be this way and like how you created this workbook to go alongside of your main book.
So as you know, like I taught for 10 years as a teacher and have my master's in education. And there's a reason why in school you get homework every night. It's not because a teacher is like, if I can't have fun, neither can you. That's not why. The reason why you get homework is that the teacher understands that you have to put into practice something that you've just learned.
Yeah.
If you want to really see movement toward adopting that thing and making it your own. My father would have this thing that he would tell us after we graduated, whatever, my master's, my bachelor's, my high school, he would say, the beautiful thing is that you now have the next level of education. And education, once given, can never be rescinded. No one can ever take that back from you. And so with like the reason why I wrote it in this way, with each chapter, each of these financial wholeness steps, immediately giving you the space to do the work, to practice the work, is because you're going to be imperfect at first. So one, I'm like, here's the lesson. I'm going to teach it. 2, inside the book, I said, here's what it looks like properly done. So I give you the visual to see like, oh, okay, got it. And then 3, here's the place for you to practice to do it. And even if you're like, oh my gosh, I messed up, like literally the book comes with this free toolkit that's online that allows you to print additional pages so you can keep practicing until you get it right. And then 4th, and what makes the book really special, is I invite you to, remember I said community, I invite you to one of my online communities to continue the work alongside other people also doing the work. So you get the guide, me, you get the physical representation of what it should look like, you get the space to practice, and you get people to surround you as you practice who are also practicing. And if you have those 4 things, there's no way not to do better. There's no way not to shift the needle in your favor. And so there's no way not to achieve financial wholeness.
One thing that I think is so powerful, and Drew and I were actually just having a conversation about this, is when you can get into rooms, either physically or digitally, with people who aren't afraid to talk about money, your understanding of it shifts in massive ways. Drew and I were just having this conversation about when I joined my first mastermind, and I walked into a space where people weren't afraid to talk about how much their launch did or what their goal was or what their profit margins were. And I had never been exposed to that. So let's first break down, why are people so secretive about money? Why is it so taboo? Because I've never understood that. I've always been someone who's ask me anything and I'll tell you, which could be good or bad. But where does this come from?
Because money has been unfortunately linked to judgment. Right? That it is a value judgment, right? That if you don't have money, it's almost like a value judgment about who you are as a person, and that's just not true, because a lot of people have money just because they happen to be born into a certain family. Some people have access to money. I live on the East Coast, so it's easier to find employment here. I didn't choose this. Yeah. I didn't choose the country that I was born into. I didn't choose the family that I was born into. So much of that is the reason why people have easier access to money. And so, but unfortunately, we have been taught that no, money equals value. And if you don't have it, then you're less valuable. And so people don't want to admit that maybe they're having trouble accessing money, trouble managing money, because they know that the world is going to see them as less valuable, which is really such a shame, because that's just not true. And I hope that's why I talk about my mistakes so freely, because I know people see me, they're like, oh my God, I love Budgetnista. And I'm like, and at one point I was $35,000 in debt because of a scam. And I lost my house to foreclosure. And they're like, wait, so this person that I like and admire also had money issues. So two things can be true.
Yes.
That you can like and admire someone and they could have a lack of access to money or financial issues, and those two things can still inhabit the same space in the same person. Yes. And so I think that's what it really is. Unfortunately, money is linked to an unfair judgment about who you are and what you're capable of. And it's just unfair and not true, because so much of it really depends on the family you were born into, where you live, the country you happen to be born into. And so as a result, though, we make people feel bad, and they don't want to feel bad. Who wants to feel judged? So,
yeah. Would you say, because even being a part of your community and seeing people celebrate wins and talk about their struggles and stuff, it just brings a humanness to the whole discussion. And I think that is one of the things, I love how you're talking about, pull it out from being secret, pull it out of the darkness, bring it into the light, even if it's hard or scary or bad, if you think that. And I think it's so powerful to be in conversation with other people who are willing to talk about money, because you can just learn so much.
Yes, it is, because with one, I do this thing whenever I go live. I said, I'll say something like, if you've had money trouble in the last 3 months, put a 1 in the comments. Yeah. And because I want people to see 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. You're like, wait. Yeah. It's not just me.
Yes.
Yes. It's not just me, because that's the thing about shame, right? Shame loves for you to think that it's just you. Shame is it's just me and you. Yep. You're all by yourself. Yep. Nobody could possibly understand. But the only way to shake shame is to give voice to it. Yeah. The moment you put a 1 in the comments and you see thousands of other ones, you're like, oh, wait, okay, so... And then I'll get even more granular. I'm like, who had an issue this month? Yeah. Put a 2 in the comments, 2, and you're like, oh, who had an issue that cost more than $1,000? Because I want people to see, even in your minutia of oh, well, it's different because I have 2 kids. Well, so does she. Yeah. Well, it's different because I'm unemployed. Well, so are they. Yeah. And you're like, oh, because once you can drop the I'm alone in this, then we can start working on, now collectively we could work together to fix it. Yeah. And so that's always been my aim, and why I started the Budgetnista, because as I was navigating my own financial journey and struggling, I thought to myself, this is really lonely. I can't be the only person out here. And I always promise myself this, and to me this is a true mark of a teacher, that I promise myself, if I can learn it, I will teach it.
Yes.
That's always a promise that I've made. I feel like that is one of the, like, I think people are called to be certain things, some people, right? And I know since I was a little girl, I knew that I was called to be a teacher, and that I was certain things that I learned expressly because I'm supposed to then teach it. I'm not here to keep any of those things to myself. And so sometimes when I'm going through a thing, I'm like, okay, God must really want me to teach this thing because I'm learning it the hard way.
Yes. Oh my gosh. So in your 10-step process, the first one is to build your budget. And we actually talked about this in a past episode. We talked about different budgeting things and ways. So I want to go to step 2, which so many people struggle with, and I think is a really good focus as we navigate a time of year where people are spending a lot, but also a time of year where people are looking forward for next year with intention or goals or resolutions, whatever that is. And that's saving. And I think it's so hard to start to think about, like, what do I need to save? How do I save? And in your book, Made Whole, you talk about how to calculate your savings goal number. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I think for so many people, the idea of savings even feels daunting, or it feels like it's too small. It's not enough. It's not even making a dent into what the goal is. So let's walk through that.
Well, first, when you're first thinking about saving, I want you to especially if you have very little to save, don't worry about the number at first. We're just practicing habit. So it's like when you first start working out, like, let's be real. Like, I'm going to run 3 miles maybe today, and then we'll see you in 3 months because you're not, you know? So in the beginning, it's like, I just need you to go outside and walk around the block. We're just practicing saying, I am the type of person that gets up, puts on my shoes, and I go and I move my body. We just have to let's get that under control. That might take you 6 months of just, I take a walk every day, and then once you become that kind of person that I save, so it could be just $1, $5, $10. It's actually not about the amount. You're retraining your mind to say, I'm actually a saver. The amount doesn't matter. I'm the type of person that saves. And then once you get there, then you can start asking yourself, what's the things I'm wanting to save for? So when you first start saving, it's easier to have a specific goal in mind. I want to go on vacation. I want to buy a house. I want to get winter clothes, whatever it is. So deciding what that thing is that you're wanting, how long before you want to get that thing. So let's just say the thing you're wanting is going to cost $1,000, right? It's a plane ticket to Bora Bora, right? And you're like, I would really love to buy this plane ticket in 10 months. So then the math is easy. It's $1,000 divided by those 10 months. So the goal is to try to save as close to or over $100 a month to get to that thing. So that way every month, you're not thinking about the big number of 1,000. You're really just like, okay, what do I need to do to get to $100 saved this month? And there might be some month where you're able to do 200. That's great, because there might be a month you're only able to do 50. And so you're able to like offset. I think the key is, and when it comes to savings, is to mimic the way squirrels save. So I live on the East Coast, and right now it's fall/winterish, right? And so there's so many acorns on the ground, and the squirrels are going crazy. And so because squirrels understand that abundance comes around seasonally. And they work the hardest and save the most during abundant times. Human beings are the opposite. We're like, ooh, child, it's good times over here. I'm going to chill because I can relax. Money is flowing. Right? During the pandemic, so many people had like these pop-up businesses where it was flowing. And that's when they were relaxing and spending the most, the opposite of squirrels. Because squirrels understand that winter comes eventually. Right? Typically at the tail end of a high season. Like if you've been in business long enough, right? All of us who during the pandemic who our businesses shot up, we were all like, okay, this is a big, let me stack some of this money because I know that there might be a slow season coming, and because not through any fault of your own, that's just finances are seasonal. So I want you to think about that too, that you gotten yourself a raise, you got a new job, maybe you sold a house, something. Money is in abundance in this moment. Well, this is when you want to lean in to maximize as much of that money as possible that you can pull out, and also save more than you normally would percentage-wise, because that money is not just for the fall and spring of your financial life. It is also to pay for when the winter comes. So if you understand that like, okay, this is a season. It's not always going to be financial winter, but neither will it always be financial summer and spring. And so keeping that in mind, like doing that savings math, but also understanding that I'm going to save like a squirrel, those two things will change your saving life.
Oh, I remember when I was basically thrown off the deep end in learning this as a wedding photographer in Wisconsin. So it was like I would shoot weddings for 6 months out of the year and then not do a single thing for 6 months. And I was so thankful I saved, because then I could relax in that slower season instead of feeling like stressed and frantic.
Yes.
But I think so many entrepreneurs don't recognize too, like there's such seasonality no matter what business you're in. And so I love this advice, because I think it's beautiful that like in the abundance, it's like this beautiful opportunity to save more so that you're not in crisis when things slow down. Not if, when, right? We know this. We know this.
I don't care how big. Remember Sears? What? I grew up on Sears. Where's Sears?
Yeah. They're gone.
You know, like Lord & Taylor?
Yeah.
I mean, I got my prom dress from Lord & Taylor. Where's Lord & Taylor?
Yeah.
So these huge conglomerates are not here.
Yeah.
Because they had their financial winter and they weren't able to weather the storm. So you have to ask yourself, you're never going to be exempt from rough times. It's not because you're bad or you did anything wrong. It's just life.
Yeah.
Like life is seasonal. And so once you understand that in your personal financial life, and if you have a business, that once you acknowledge like, oh, times are good, they won't always be good.
Yeah.
Or times are bad, they won't always be bad. That like once you acknowledge that up or down, like the key is that I want you to be okay either way. And that's what Made Whole is really all about, that no matter the up or the down, because you know how to navigate it, you're going to be okay either way.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. Step 3 is dig out of debt, which you spoke about when you shared your story about being $35,000 in debt. So everyone just needs to listen to all of Tiffany's content on the Goal Digger podcast. But I want to skip to step number 5, which is increase your income. Now, our audience is primarily business owners.
Okay.
What should they be thinking about as we enter into this new year? Like, of course, increasing your income, that sounds amazing. But like, what things should be the focus when we think of that as the ultimate goal? Like, what are the pillars? What are the steps? What should be in that frame?
So this is where I am now, because I have to pivot.
Yeah.
Because business that worked before is not working now.
Yeah.
You know, 2023 was we were still in the black, but I'm used to being like midnight in the black.
Yeah.
And I was like barely lowercase black this year. And I was like, oh my gosh, what's happening? You know, and so 2023 was a rough financial year. The customer changed, expectations change. Yeah. People are tightening up. And so thankfully, I'm the queen of the pre-pivot, meaning that like when things are good, that's when I start to look ahead and say, well, if they weren't, what will we do? Yes. And we start to put things in place. Yes. And so one of the best things you can do to make more money. So I did this with I have an online school called the Literature Academy, and subscriptions really took a hit this year. But this year we did a really good job of going deep versus wide. Yes. One, we refreshed all of our courses because I wanted to make the people who were already paying happy.
Yes.
Stay.
Amen.
So that was it, right? So it was like, so our churn rate went from like, I don't know, maybe like above 10% to under 7%. Yep. So one of the best ways to make money is to retain customers.
Yes.
You actually don't have to go out and get as many people if you keep the people you have. So that was one. 2, we looked at all of our expenses with literally, I have a magnifying glass. I'm so extra with a magnifying glass. And I was like, do we need to spend that? Like, I have an awesome CEO. I mean, something as simple as, we already use Slack. Can we pay for the year instead of monthly to save that 20%?
Yep.
So she lowered our expenses by 1/3. That's huge. I didn't realize how much money we were wasting on like, well, this is not really bringing a return, and we can actually use a less expensive version of this, and we can 1/3. Yeah. And so that, although we didn't quote unquote make more, we made more. Yeah. Because we kept more people, we reduced our expenses. And so that was 2. And then 3, we had to ask ourselves, like, I only know what I know. And I tell this to Tamara, my CEO of my online school, all the time. And that in order for us to do something different, we have to interject new ways of thinking. Yeah. And so I started to just reach out to all of my friends in the subscription space just to be like, what are you up to? Yeah. What's going on? Because I need to interject new ideas into like, oh, well, maybe we can bring my online school into colleges. oh, maybe we can connect with organizations that are looking for, and we can white label. I never thought about that. I think Rory gave me that idea when we were at Author for Author.
Yeah.
Maybe. So that's really critical, that scaling, and if you have tapped out kind of like what your brain knows, you have to interject new ways of thinking. That's why you're listening to this podcast.
Yeah.
You know, like Jenna might say something, you're like, wait, I never thought about that. You know, maybe it's masterminding. You know, if you don't have a group of friends who have businesses, sometimes I just will ask even like my regular friends, what subscriptions do you use? Why do you use them? What's so great about it?
Yeah.
You know, so you have to interject something new in order to say, you could still be in the same core business. Like I am in the same core business for the last 15 years is I teach financial education, but then I have books. I have my podcast, Brown Ambition. I have my online school. I have my community, which I'm on. It's the same core business done 15 different ways because of new knowledge being injected. And even now, I'm pivoting with the Budgetnista because something that we're really good at is that we have really an amazing trust with my audience. And so they share a lot of information. I do a lot of surveys with them, and we use them internally so we can create the next product or service that they're going to need. Yeah. But I was telling a friend of mine, I was like, oh, I have this survey here. I've got 100,000 people responded. He was like, wait, what? I was like, yeah, I have a survey. 100,000 people responded. So I think he was like, Tiffany, there's going to be companies that would like to know what are the thoughts of women in finance and what they're wanting. And I was like, you think? He was like, Tiffany, yes. Who doesn't want to know what 100,000 women spending money want their money to go toward? So I never thought about that. So now I'm thinking, can I provide insights for companies who want to know what my audience is thinking and feeling when it comes to spending money? Yeah. That's not something, I teach financial education, and I've been collecting insights for 15 years for our own internal. And now that one little piece made me say, I never thought about that. Yeah. You know? And so that's what it looks like. It's like you have to interject something new, you know, especially now with you know, what worked before is not going to work now. I don't care how successful. Netflix started off with delivering DVDs. They just recently, the last month, delivered their last DVD. You know? And so now, because imagine if Netflix said, DVDs work. We're going to stick with DVDs. Yes. Okay, Blockbuster.
Yes.
Like, you know, so that's what I say.
Oh, I love that. And one thing that I think is so important that you touched on, and I actually just did an episode about this, of you don't need more offers. You got to go deeper and not wider. Yes. And I think so many entrepreneurs become entrepreneurs because we're excitable and we're always looking for something new. And I feel like when you really look at numbers, a lot of times Pareto's principle is at play, right? Where it's 80% of our results are coming from 20% of our offers or efforts. And I have not created a new offer in 4 years, not a single new offer. But as you said, you've got to figure out different ways to get that offer out there, or to optimize it, or to energize it, or whatever that is. And so I love that philosophy of it's not necessarily about doing more, it's about being more intentional. Yes. And I think that that's so powerful for people, because especially as we look into the new year, I think it's so easy to get excited about this new idea and to put all your time and energy and effort. But you probably already have something really good that could just be made better.
Because everybody in the world has not heard. Because sometimes you think you're everybody knows. I'm sorry. There's 7 billion people.
Yes.
How could
everybody
know? They don't.
No,
you know,
they don't.
Just when I think to myself, so my Get Good with Money has sold nearly 300,000 copies. Yeah. And just when I'm like, oh my gosh, we tapped out the audience. Yeah. It's still selling about 1,000 copies a week. Yeah. I'm like, insane. Who is buying this book?
Yes.
Isn't there's an album, I forget I don't know if it's Michael Jackson's album or the Beatles or whatever. It's never left the Billboard charts. It's been on top 100. Who is still buying the Beatles after all these years? I promise you, you're not a Beatle. You have not tapped out your audience. People do not know about your offer. There's more people to explore. And so just keeping that in mind that I'm not a Beatle. Yeah. There are literally hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people that if they knew about my thing would likely buy it. Continue to go deep versus wide.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Oh my gosh. Okay, I'm going to give people a teaser, but then I'm going to skip to the next one I want to talk about. So we talked about increasing your income. Then we're going to talk about investing like an insider, get good with insurance. Now, then it's get rich-ish, but I want to skip to number 9, which I know I'm kind of skipping to the end. That's but okay. Pick your money team. This is something that has been so hard for me. Even in navigating over a decade of entrepreneurship, I feel like I'm still figuring out, like, what is my money team? Who's on it? What does it look like? So what is a money team, and what can somebody that's listening to this do to create a money team moving into the new year?
So your money team are the people on your team that are affected by or affect your financial choices. So you might have children, you might have a spouse or a partner, you might have a business. And so for me as a businesswoman, my money team consists, I have a CFO, I have also like a money director of my smaller company, because I don't need a whole CFO there. I have what I call my big accountant, who like at the end looks at like my personal, stuff, but also the business stuff. I also have a financial advisor, so you don't necessarily need all this. I'm just sharing like who's on the team. And in that chapter, I break down like 5 or 6 potential money team folks. And the steps are not go get them. It's just, I want you to know what they do, how you'd find them, and what hiring one would kind of look like. Just so if you think to yourself, I want a financial advisor, do I need one? Well, if you did, I want you to know that there are financial advisors that are fee-based or fee-only. There are financial advisors that are CFPs, which are my favorite. That's the gold standard. These are certified financial planners. Financial advisors is like saying I'm a teacher. Certified financial planner is I'm a professor. So a professor is a teacher, but it's the next level, right? And so I like a fee-only CFP, right? And so that means that they're only paid by you. That's how you remember that. Because it means that a fee-based somebody might say, okay, so Jenna, you pay me, but also I'm going to sell you this insurance, and the insurance company low-key is going to pay me too. So then it's like, well, who are you loyal to?
Right thing. Yeah. Yes.
Who are you loyal? My dad would say, he who pays the piper determines the tune.
Yes.
So it's like, well, like if you're young, like whoever pays the DJ, you get to tell the DJ what to play. So if like the insurance company is paying the DJ, they're going to play their records. Versus like if you're only being paid by me, then I know that like I'm not worried about, the things that you might recommend, because you don't get any kickbacks basically. And so it's really important for things, especially as business owners. So when I went from being a sole proprietor LLC to an S Corp, that's not a decision you make by yourself. I had to say, hey, accountant, what does that mean for taxes? And then I have an attorney, that's also potentially part of your money team. It's, hey, attorney, what does that mean for, what does that mean for everything else that I'm doing? Like, what are my liabilities? And then I'm also asking my CFO, hey, CFO, what does that mean for the company if we do that? And then lastly, what I like to have my own CFP, my own financial advisor. Hey, CFP, what does that mean for Tiffany? So at one point we were considering going from an S Corp to a C Corp. This is basically the ways that your companies are taxed. So when you're a sole proprietor, that means that like you are self-employed. You don't work for anyone. And under $100,000 a year, that typically is fine, because your self-employment tax is around 30% or whatever. So if you're only making like $10,000, $20,000 your first year, okay. But once you start to make over 6 figures and you're paying 30% in self-employment tax, it might, depending on what your money team said, it might be wise to go to an S Corp, because then you're no longer self-employed. You actually are an employee of your company. So you can drop that self-employment tax and you still pay taxes, but not that. So it's like, okay, but those decisions, you see, like if you don't have a team, you can make choices that are not wise. And I did that. And I tell you, it cost me 7 figures. And there was a year where I was just running rogue until I finally got a really good accountant who helped me to get, the IRS was like, so next on the audit list is Tiffany Aliche. I was like, wait! She cleaned this all the way up. But so that's what I say, like your financial team is so critical. So it is that hands down, I don't care who you hire in your business. To me, the most important hire in any business is going to be your financial team, because I don't care how big you are, you will be tanked by the IRS and taxes. I don't care how amazing you are, you will be tanked if you cannot pay your employees on time. You know what I mean? So that financial team is critical. And so And it takes a while to find really great people. I just switched out somebody, a few weeks ago because it wasn't working out.
Yeah.
And it's too expensive to have the wrong person on my team.
Yeah.
So just keeping that in mind that you want to have people on the team that have vested interests in different places. Business vested interest if you have a business. Your own personal vested interest, if you have that, your legal vested interest and this larger financial vested interest. I love when my team, because one, it's like all women, so it's amazing.
Yeah.
I'm like, hey, Georgie, hey, Anjali, hey, Jolene. Hey, I love it. We're all the women just smiling like, oh, my God.
Yeah, look at us. Well, I love this, too, because I think a lot of entrepreneurs don't think about this from the beginning. I mean, most of us wouldn't. And so if somebody's listening and they're brand new, just kind of think about slowly building over time. But if you are someone with an established business and you don't have a money team, this is your invitation to call in the right people for you to help guide you on your next steps. And I know for me, over the pandemic, I actually was coordinating phone calls with all of those people that you were listing to everyone get on one Zoom and argue your point, because someone was saying, you need this life insurance. And then the next person was saying, but you don't need it because you have this. And then the next person was saying, but you should invest here. And then the next person was saying your 401ks. And so I was like, you guys all get together and duke it out for the cause of understanding the bigger picture, because I don't want to be an expert in it. I don't need to be an expert in it if I get the right people in there. But I think that a lot of times we have people so siloed off when it comes to money that the bigger picture gets lost, or you miss out on advantages that you could take, or you get penalized for things that you shouldn't. And so if there is a way for, even if your money team is just your accountants, connecting with them and talking about this is the goal, this is the vision. And that has been like a huge pain point for so many entrepreneurs.
They now it's to the point where they talk to each other.
Yeah. Yes.
Like I'll just be on the email just reading. Yes.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh yeah, Anjali made a good point there. Yes. That if we make that decision, it's good for the company, but not so great for Tiffany's pocket.
Yes. So build in those communications. Don't let your financial team be siloed. I think that's the biggest piece of advice I can give people is encourage them to connect and remind them of the bigger picture or the ultimate goal, because it's going to take you in different directions, but you could be getting advice that seems really well-intentioned from one person, but it might be negatively impacting. So that's my soapbox on that. But I just love the money team idea too, because I think, again, if we go back to the very beginning of that, isolation and that secrecy and shame and all the different emotions we feel around money, when you have people on your team that you trust, I feel like it really bolsters confidence in you and your decisions that you're making around money. And I think that can really shift the energy.
And plus, too, you'll get to find out, because you're, to your point, Jenna, you don't want to be an expert in those things. So sometimes I won't notice that someone might be deficient in the skill set. Yeah. Because I'm like, well, girl, I didn't go to accounting school. Yeah. Sounds good to me.
Yeah.
But then you have your attorney who works with accountants all the time, your CFO that works with accountants all the time, your financial advisor, and they're like, can we talk to you in the room for a minute? Yes. That's not how you do that. Yeah. Yeah. And I'm like, oh, I wouldn't have known. Yeah. Yes. So even that, it keeps everyone on the up and up. And I'm like, good to know. Because that is not my expertise, but that's y'all's expertise. So that definitely has happened before, where I had to get called to the carpet. It's like, no, you love her. She's great. Hugs, kisses. Yeah. Send her cookies on Christmas. But that there's an error in your taxes, and that's why you owed more than you thought you did. Yeah. And you're like, okay. Ooh. So it's a checks and balances that your money team provides too. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Tiffany, this episode was so good, and we only covered 3 of the main points that are inside of your book. So give listeners kind of a peek of what they can get when they get made whole. Give us kind of more insight, because we literally just scratched the surface.
So you're also going to get, I know the teacher in me understands that you might feel overwhelmed by the work. So I have these quick starts also in Made Whole, where it's like, okay, you don't feel like doing this whole step right now. Do this one small thing to quick start the step and come back to it later. And this one small thing will transform your understanding of this component of Made Whole. So that's something that I added to it. And lastly, I also added these really beautiful in real life, I call them IRL stories. Yeah. So people who read the initial textbook, Get Good with Money, I asked them, how did this book help you? Because I'm writing the companion book. Yeah. And then I included them in each chapter, because sometimes you just need that extra, I don't think I can do it. So to read someone's story that is doing this, that did the step that you're currently reading, and it was hard for them too, but they saw their way through, and you get to hear kind of like their hero's journey of that step. I wanted to make sure to add that in as well. I'm just really proud. It's a hardcover workbook. I made sure that Penguin, my publisher, made it wide so it can lay open on its own. That was really important to me. Yeah. So you could do work in it. And like I said, you can also be invited to all my communities, which are free, and find your safe space as you work through this. You're never alone unless you want to be.
Oh, Tiffany, where can everybody find your book, connect with you, learn more about your community and all your offerings? Give us all the places.
So I am the Budgetnista on all the social platforms. My favorite is probably Instagram right about now. And thebudgetnista.com is my site where everything is there. But also, if you want to get made whole, you can go to madewholeworkbook.com.
Amazing. Thank you so much for coming back on the podcast. Thank you for just sharing your insights, your knowledge, your excitement around this topic. I have loved learning from you over the years, and I feel like this won't be the last time we'll hear from you.
Well, thank you, Jenna. Thank you for having me on as usual.
Hey, thank you so much for watching this episode of the Goal Digger Podcast. I'm so happy you're here. And to make sure you don't miss any future episodes, make sure you're subscribed to the show. And if you loved today's episode, which I hope you did, check out this one next. I think you're going to love this video too. One thing that I've loved about getting this data, and here's a good story, is we were in a launch and we had 2 different freebies running. They were different freebies. But what was so interesting is they were getting around the same amount of traffic, but one was converting 5 times better than the other one. Seeing this side by side in a chart allowed me to say, wait a minute, why is this one doing so good and why is this one not doing great?